Good evening. I know you've been waiting for this to happen, and we're so excited to have you here. And you're wondering, who is this person? My name is Carol Mason. I'm the president of John Jay College's Criminal Justice, your host tonight, and we are so delighted to have you with us tonight for this important forum. I'm delighted to welcome you to tonight's forum, sponsored by the Community Service Society of New York, the Federation of Protestant Welfare Agencies, City and State New York, and BronxNet. We are honored to partner with these leading organizations to present an informative and engaging discussion about critical issues facing our city. It will be moderated by impressive journalists whom you'll hear from later. For 60 years, John Jay College has been educating for justice and fueling student success through academic excellence, research, innovative programs like this event, and civic engagement. It is wonderful to see many of our neighbors, civic and nonprofit partners, and members of our college community here. And the young men who were helping you find your way here are John Jay students and part of our My Brother's Keeper initiative. I'm especially thrilled to see our students attending and volunteering tonight, as they are our future leaders. I expect to see some of them on the stage at some point for a debate like this. And I want to thank the staff of the John J. Gerald Lynch Theater and the Office of External Affairs, especially Mindy Bockstein, for their efforts in facilitating this event. We know that by attending forums like this and casting your vote, you're actively seizing the power to secure a brighter future for yourself and generations to come. It's a power that none of us should take lightly, a power that has been fought for tirelessly, and a power that can impact our communities significantly. Your right to vote, your power of voting, preserves our democracy. At this critical moment in time, with issues involving economic security, affordability, public safety, wealth and education disparities, and more, hearing from the candidates is important. It's important to use your vote as you hear them respond to shape our communities, and this responsibility, this importance has never been greater. It is now my great pleasure to introduce someone who has been called the conscience of New York City. Over his nearly 40 years as president and CEO of the Community Service Society of New York, David Jones has shined a light on the city's most disconnected residents. Under his leadership, CSS research, analysis, and advocacy played a role in the city and state levels in the passage of paid sick days, paid family leave, citywide ban-the-box laws, yes, clean slate, legislation protecting New Yorkers from aggressive medical debt collection practices, and establishing half-priced bus and subway fares for low-income New Yorkers. John Jay has been a partner and a beneficiary of many of these important reforms. So please join me in welcoming and thanking David Jones for his leadership.
Good evening. Thank you for coming. I promise to be very short because we want to get right to the reason you've come here tonight, to hear directly from candidates vying to be the next mayor of the city of New York. For those of you who may not know us, CSS, Community Service Society, is a long-time not-for-profit organization. We use a combination of research and program services and advocacy to promote economic opportunity and champion a more equitable city and state. We organize today's forum because voters need to know what the candidates running for mayor will prioritize, who they will fight for, and most importantly, how they will address the issues that make it so hard for us and so many low-income and moderate-income New Yorkers to live and work and raise a family here. We worked with several partners to make this forum possible. I want to thank our co-sponsors, City and State New York, FPWA, Federation of Protestant Welfare Agencies, BronxNet, and John Jay College, of course. And of course, we want to thank the candidates for taking time out of their schedules. The forum's theme is affordability and economic security. And with that, I'll turn things over to our moderators, Jeffrey Mays, Metro political reporter for the New York Times. He's going to be right here. and Anna McDonald, Senior City Hall Reporter for City and State, New York. And now the moderators will come out and take the stage. Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us here in person and online. We want to start out by welcoming and introducing our candidates. I'm going to do it in order, alphabetical order. Introducing Adrienne Adams. She is the Speaker of the City Council. Michael Blake is a former assemblyman and the former vice chair of the Democratic National Committee. Brad Lander is the current comptroller for New York City. Zelnor Myrie is a state senator from Brooklyn. Jessica Ramos is a state senator from Queens. We are to be joined later by Scott Stringer, the former controller. Oh.
He's here. He's here.
He's here. All right. I made it happen.
Good timing.
So Scott Stringer, the former city controller. Last but not least, we have former hedge fund manager Whitney Tilson. Thank you all for joining us. Other candidates in the primary, including former Governor Andrew Cuomo and Zohran Mamdani, were invited to participate in this forum, but they declined. Also would like to note that Adrienne Adams, the Speaker of the City Council, has another meeting at 7 p.m., so she will be leaving us at that time.
Thank you. And before we get started here, we're going to go over some ground rules. Thank you all for coming, and thank you everyone in the audience and those tuning in remotely for taking the time and attention to tune in tonight. We are going to lay out, in the interest of getting to the issues quickly, there will be no opening statements. We're going to be covering 4 policy issues tonight: housing, economic security, healthcare, and criminal justice. Some of these questions will be posed to all the candidates. Others will be mixed in between the candidates. Candidates will have 1 minute to respond to each question, and there's a very helpful clock up there. We're going to be tight in respect of all of your schedules. We will have the discretion to add time for a follow-up if needed, but we are going to be pretty close to the clock here. We will have a couple lightning round questions, which everybody loves, I know, sprinkled throughout, and then we'll finish with closing statements of 30 seconds each. Thank you again for coming. And again, for tuning in. We would ask the audience to please refrain from interrupting the candidates and causing any other disruptions. Applause is okay, but if an audience member disrupts the program, we'll issue a warning, and if there are further disruptions, they will be subject to removal from the auditorium. And a last programming note is that today's forum is being broadcast live by BronxNet, as well as live streamed. And with that, we'll get into the first topic at hand, which is housing. A question for all the candidates. New York City's housing crisis is driven by high rents and a lack of housing that the majority of New Yorkers can actually afford. Would you support the expansion of social housing in New York City, and what specific steps would you take as mayor to jumpstart its production? And we'll start with Speaker Adams.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you to John Jay for having us here tonight. It's a pleasure to be with you. As the most consistent leader in city government who has actually confronted the affordability crisis and taking on what we know to be one of the most dire situations that New York City has ever seen. As Speaker of the City Council, we have moved to make sure that we are ensuring new housing across the city. One of the main things that I said to my body when first becoming Speaker is that we will never be the council that says no when it comes to places that people need to live. So in ensuring that, and what I will do as mayor will be to expand on the things that we've already done in the city council in moving into building housing, making sure that it's affordable. Under my leadership, we have made sure that we will be getting 120,000 new units of housing. We have seen and we have put through a proposal called the City of Yes, which we have switched in the City Council to rename it to City of All, where I have ensured $5 billion. Yes.
If you can.
Okay. Oh, you know what? I can't see the timer. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
It's actually impaired, so I couldn't. There's something standing there, so my apologies. I'll stop.
I'm sorry.
I'll stop. We'll wait till the next. Okay. Sorry about that. I can't see.
Maybe we can try to figure out how
I
to
can
fix that in
ramble,
the
everybody. I'm
meantime.
sorry.
For now, Mr. Blake.
Good evening to everyone, John Jay, to Dr. Mason, and of course BronxNet and everyone here tonight. Housing and childcare are the two fundamental expenses for every New Yorker that are impacting our affordability. And so to the question, we have to find critical ways to change the crisis that's at hand. It's the reason why I said that we need to have local median income, because area median income is not working to actually create true affordability. We need to expand income thresholds, because right now you have to be rich or poor enough to get access to homes in New York. We have to end credit scores being used for rent and home ownership applications because they're a discriminatory process impacting us. We need a Mitchell-Lama 2.0 where we can focus on building up to 600,000 units across the city, where we have dedicated focus that if a developer actually does not hit on those metrics, we would rescind that towards them. And it'd be very intentional around how are we reimagining what's happening around not just public housing, but to the question around social housing and that impact. This entire vision for us is called Welcome Home. It is on our website at blakefornyc.com/welcome home. We look forward to discussing more later on tonight.
Just a quick, can everyone see the clock except for Speaker Adams?
It is impaired by the two cameras, so you got to move a little bit.
Okay. Maybe if we could move those cameras just so we can stay on time, that would be great. Controller Lander.
Good evening. Thank you, John Jay. Thank you, CSS. I've been working with you on social housing now for 30 years, for 15 years before I ever got into city government. I built and preserved affordable and social housing at the Fifth Avenue Committee and the Pratt Center. On day one of my administration, I'm going to declare a local state of emergency on the housing crisis so we can build 500,000 new homes over the next decade, better protect tenants by getting back to right to counsel, restore the pathway to affordable home ownership through social housing for working and middle-class families, and fix HPD and NYCHA so they can deliver. In terms of social housing, it's really one critical element, and that's why I've identified the public developer. I'd like to use the NYCHA, the Public Housing Preservation Trust, which can do social housing as infill on NYCHA sites and also build 50,000 units of social housing that New Yorkers could afford to buy or rent on 4 of the city's 12 municipal golf courses, where, because we own the land, we can keep those units affordable permanently and build that next generation of Mitchell-Lama or social housing for 50,000 New York City families.
Thank you. Senator Myrie.
Thank you, and thank you to John Jay and to our moderators. I proudly co-sponsor a bill sponsored by one of my colleagues, Senator Clear, that would expand social housing on the state level. I am the prime sponsor on the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, which would give tenants the opportunity to purchase their building when it goes up for sale. But just today I highlighted part of my plan to rebuild NYC that would use city-owned land to build housing that is affordable for New Yorkers. We cannot get out of this affordability crisis unless we have more housing. And I have a plan to deliver 1 million homes over the next decade that also includes fully funding our Right to Counsel program so that if you are facing eviction, that you will have counsel to help you stay in your homes.
Thank you. Senator Ramos.
Good evening, everyone. You know, we have more than 5,000 apartments being warehoused at NYCHA right now. If we just dedicated our taxpayer dollars to make sure that we are properly repairing those apartments and making them available for those who need it most. We have over 200,000 New Yorkers on the wait list for NYCHA apartments. And within themselves, they are a social supportive housing development that can allow us to have the wraparound services needed for people who need everything from mental health services to workforce development opportunities. And we should really have a housing first approach to solving our homelessness crisis. I carry a bill in the Senate right now that I'd be able to do outright as your mayor, called the Jobs and Housing Act, which would leverage our taxpayer dollars with our union pension funds. Yes, our private union pension funds through the AFL-CIO Housing Investment Trust, to make sure that we are replicating the likes of Penn South, Co-op City, and many ways that we've traditionally provided low-income rentals and modest equity home ownership opportunities so that we city folk can own a piece of our city.
Thank you. Mr. Stringer.
You know, for too long, the city has allowed luxury developers to come to communities and ask permission to build tall skyscrapers, and then as a give back, they give affordable housing in the community. The community gets gentrified, people leave, long-time residents. It's time to think about what is really possible in this city. And I believe we need a massive affordable housing program, a massive program to deliver low-income housing. LaGuardia did that with public housing, 2,200 buildings. Wagner and Lindsay, former mayors, built the Mitchell-Amo program. I believe that we should take our vacant lots, 1,000 strong. I know this, I audited this when I was controller, and we should build the next generation of affordable housing. Those lots are your lots. You own them. I own them. We own them. Let's not give them away to speculators. Let's invest in not-for-profit organizations. Let's invest in the people who actually know how to build affordable housing. That's the maximum we need from the next mayor, and there's no time to waste. I know how to do this. I've been thinking about it for a long time. We can do this together.
Thank you. Mr. Tilson.
Good evening, everyone. We all agree there is a crisis. The question is how to solve it. The answers that I consistently hear from career politicians involves government spending and government actions. Might not surprise you to hear from someone who spent his career in the private sector that we need to make New York City an attractive place for the private sector to invest and build housing and generate a decent rate of return. All the private sector developers I talk to, and generally I'm talking about small owners, tell me two things. Number one, that New York should be the greatest city to invest in. It has the highest density, the highest rents, it's the wealthiest city in the world. But secondly, they say the city government, quote, treats us like the enemy. They are taking their investment dollars elsewhere, most painfully when I hear them, when they say we're going over and investing in Newark. We need to have a completely different attitude from zoning to permitting to environmental reviews, et cetera. Accelerate that process to remove the uncertainty and make New York City a more attractive place for private sector developers to invest.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move to our next question. Landlords who illegally block tenants who use Section 8 vouchers or city FEPS vouchers have been identified as a problem in New York City. I'm wondering, how would you stop landlords from blocking tenants from using these programs? We're going to start with Mr. Blake.
You have to rescind the ability of these landlords to continue doing business in New York City. Why on earth would you have a scenario where someone is intentionally having racist, discriminatory policies, where they're not taking on the vouchers for New Yorkers that have access to their home, but you continue to allow them to continue with those programs? It doesn't make sense at all that we are allowing people to harm us in these regards. However, in the reverse, what we should be doing is creating greater incentives for those that are actually doing this the right way, by giving them the opportunity to be faster and upfront online, by giving them the opportunity for greater expansion in terms of the length of the contracts and collaborate with us, as well as giving the first opportunities for our nonprofits that want to be within these particular buildings as well with these entities. It does not make sense that we are not finding more ways to help New Yorkers. This is very personal for me. My family was homeless in Jamaica. We sold dinners to pay rent in the Bronx. I grew up in Creston and Burnside. Over and over and over again, I would see how landlords would try to take advantage of us as a community. As mayor, I'd be very serious. You don't want to take the vouchers of a New Yorker. You cannot continue to work and have a house in New York.
Thank you. Mr. Tilson, how would you answer that question?
I'll agree with
Michael Blake, that obviously any kind of discrimination is unacceptable, but generally speaking, I think people who own property should be allowed to decide who they want to rent to, subject obviously to not allowing discrimination. And if a landlord chooses not to accept vouchers and to find tenants in other ways, then they should be allowed to do so.
So you think landlords should be able to defy the law and not accept vouchers?
Are you telling me it is a requirement that every landlord in New York City must accept all vouchers?
It's illegal to
It is
reject
indeed.
someone as a tenant because of how they're paying illegal.
So,
Please, yeah,
sure.
Controller.
I mean, yeah, there's a lot of tools that we're not using here. We have a law on the books, a source of income non-discrimination law. It is a part of New York City human rights law that you can't discriminate against households based on their source of income, and that means you have to accept someone with a housing voucher who's able to pay. Now, unfortunately, the City Commission on Human Rights is not resourced well enough to enforce the law. When I was in the City Council, we fought to get it more resources, both so it could do testing, but also just look online, the number of listings that say no vouchers, and yet where we're not doing any enforcement is absurd. So yes, we should be enforcing the law. That means giving the City Commission on Human Rights the resources. And then there's other tools to use as well. A lot of these units get 421A or now 485X or J51 tax abatements. Every single landlord who's getting a tax abatement, they sure better be following the law. We've got the resources to enforce it. This would open up a lot of housing units to people who desperately need them.
Thank you. Senator Myrie.
Yeah, no, I think I largely agree that we should be increasing any civil enforcement on anyone that is not complying with the law currently. I also think it's important on the back end, there are administrative hurdles to getting this done, even when there is a property owner that is responsible. And I think that we have to clear that administrative hurdle. That means more personnel at HPD. That means being more efficient in how we allow for the vouchers to be processed. And so we can't ignore that back end either.
Thank you. Senator Ramos.
I would agree that we have a responsibility in city government to make sure that we are leveling the playing field for the good actors in just about every economic sector, the real estate sector not being an exception, making sure that the city even has the right connector to those apartments, playing matchmaker between the landlords and the folks looking for a home is really important, especially in a city as diverse as ours, where we're still fighting for language access, especially for so many of our families living in poverty. Making sure that city is being proactive in protecting our tenants is really important, and the number of vouchers distributed should commensurate with the number of units that are available.
Actually going to switch to a different question now. On this similar topic, there's enforcement and there's actually how the vouchers work. City Council passed an expansion of eligibility for City FEPS vouchers, housing vouchers. The Mayor Adams blocked the implementation of that, and it's an ongoing case in court for a very good reason. I'm going to start with you, Speaker Adams, on this question. How, as mayor, would you implement these bills? And importantly, how would you fund the implementation of this expansion?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I thought you were going to ask me the same question because you just took my thunder away, Annie, because what I was going to say is what I wouldn't do would be to sue the city council when we actually did enact a law to expand the City FEPS voucher program. And that's something that Mayor Adams did. He took us to court so that people would not have more places to live and more of an opportunity to live in New York and get out of shelter and get out of other places and protect people from being evicted from their homes. I certainly would obey the law, which is something that this current administration has not done. We have resources in this city. All we have to do is have the political will to make it happen. So as mayor, what I intend to do is exactly that, enact that political will. We cannot sit back and not do something when we have the ability to do something. So yes, I make sure that the law was adhered to, and I would also make sure that the housing that we have available, that we actually do open it up so that people do have places to live. It's there. We have to have the will to make it happen and not sue the city council.
Can you say specifically how you would fund it? Would money come from elsewhere, tax revenue?
Certainly tax revenue, that's always an option because that is one of our greatest benefits or ways to have monetary allowances in the city. Also, we can do some other things. Like I said, we have the funding available to do these things in the budget. Again, we just have to have the political will to do it, to make it happen.
Same question to Controller Lander.
So I support 3 of those 4 council bills which expand eligibility. The 4th one, which would broadly open up to anybody essentially facing housing precarity. We would have to get the state on board for that. Now, the state should have passed the housing access voucher program year after year after year. The city is putting up substantial housing vouchers. The federal government, though, I mean, a disaster right now and threatening emergency housing vouchers of 8,000 families that Trump has said he's going to eliminate, is supporting a lot of housing vouchers. But we basically get 0 housing vouchers from New York State. So adding the housing access voucher program would be the way that we could move forward and get state revenue to keep growing. I mean, CityFabs has helped. It is the primary way tenants are getting out of shelter, but we've got to add the state in. Also want to shout out a great program called Anthos Home that is bundling those vouchers and helping identify units out in the marketplace as a really smart way to move forward.
Thank you. Senator Ramos, same question. Would you implement the expansion, and where would you get the money to do so?
I would absolutely implement the expansion, and I would fund it by a few extra billions of dollars that we'd likely generate if we actually reformed our property tax law and made sure that our city complied with the law on the books. We've been sued a few times, and there are tremendous discrepancies in the amount of property tax that is paid between affluent and less affluent communities. And if we actually use our market rate apartments as a marker for the property value assessments, I would estimate that we would generate around at least $2 billion more than we already do. We should have enough money to house New Yorkers in a city as wealthy as ours.
Thank you. And finally, Senator, or you know what? I think I misstepped. Senator Mayoral, if we could hear from you on this as well.
Yeah, no, I think I'm going to agree with Brad here that, I penned an op-ed last week advocating for the passing of the Housing Access Voucher Program. That is something that the legislature has both passed and fought for in the budget, but has met resistance from the governor. I think that this is the year for us to get it done. And as mayor, I'd be using our bully pulpit to ensure that we got that done.
Thank you.
For our next question, we're going to talk about the New York City Housing Authority, which is home to more than 500,000 residents, many of whom are black and brown and low income. NYCHA is facing billions of dollars worth of backlogged repairs, which has been an issue for decades now. I'm wondering, how would you find the money? How would you fund those billions of dollars worth of repairs at NYCHA? And we're going to start with Senator Ramos.
Oh, well, we should start by stating the fact that the repairs that are being done to the apartments right now are not very high quality, and we end up misspending a lot of our taxpayer dollars when those repairs have to keep getting done. And we see it all the time. I've actually passed legislation in the state Senate to create a dashboard so that hopefully NYCHA tenants can follow along where their ticket is. But again, us being able to hire people, and hopefully even within NYCHA, to make those repairs, make sure there's lasting repairs, is really important. A lot of NYCHA apartments still have lead paint and need to be remediated in order to make sure that these are safe homes. So even in thinking about what other pots of money we could draw from in order to cover the $40 billion that are needed, I would even just start by being smarter about money that is being allocated to fix those apartments right now, because again, the goal is to open up all of those thousands of apartments, or over 5,000 apartments that are currently being warehoused by the city.
Thank you. Speaker Adams.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Part of the provision in our City for All was I made sure that we were getting an additional $5 billion to actually fortify that City for All proposal when it comes to building affordable houses. So what I wanted to make sure was that in addition to building affordable housing, that we actually had a means to fortify and fund our NYCHA residents and our Mitchell-Lama residents who deserve to live in dignity. So part of that funding will actually go towards preserving and repairing those places where people are living right now in deplorable conditions. So we've actually baked that part of financing into the City for All proposal. So it's baked in there. As far as other pots are concerned, again, we're going to have to look towards, and we keep saying we've got to have state partners willing to do that with us to make sure that those things happen for NYCHA. I've heard people say many times that we keep putting money in, but we don't see any results. We have to have partners to help make this happen.
Thank you. Mr. Stringer.
Look, I do think we are entering probably the most dangerous moment in NYCHA history, given the Trump attack on New York City. So the $40 billion that Jessica identifies is absolutely accurate. I audited NYCHA 19 times when I was controller. I saw the cost overruns. I saw the incompetence and just the basic lack of services that NYCHA was giving to the tenants. But I think this time we're going to have to be a little strategic, especially for the next 18 months as we attempt to take back Congress and dismantle the Trump agenda. When I was controller, when we were looking to try to figure out new ways to fund NYCHA repairs, and we realized that then Governor Cuomo had zero interest in that kind of funding. You know who he is. He's running for mayor. I don't know if you heard. He doesn't come to these things, but just in case you heard of him. But one of the proposals I had was to start thinking creatively and how to fund. And one of the ways that we should do that is by taking proceeds from the Battery Park City Authority. The controller, the mayor, and the governor each have a vote. If there was a three-way unanimous vote, we could take tens of millions of dollars and dedicate that to NYCHA repairs. We should look at different ways to fund, given the fact that we have divestment from the federal government.
Thank you. Mr. Blake.
Let's be very clear. NYCHA is in this condition because this city is not respecting black and brown people in a real way. You have individuals that have been accused of bribery and corruption and crimes because they would not actually have accountability in fixing what was going on with these capital repairs. So to the question, we're talking about a $40 billion threshold. You have to be able to lay out how do you actually generate the revenue. First, you have $2 billion of unclaimed fees and fines across the city right now, in particular from parking, about 1.4 just in that alone. Second, we need to have a vacant apartment tax to generate more revenue from the city. If someone is not living in the city, generate revenue from that individual to enforce them to actually bring in more revenue for us collectively. Third, we have to be serious about how do we also look at property tax reform and relate to Madison Square Garden and other places that are not actually paying us any real way. But then lastly, it's about a realignment of budget priorities. When you have $1.4 billion being spent on NYPD overtime, actually take that funds to help us with NYCHA. Be serious about this being a decade-long program. And as the only person who could say to have state house, local, and federal experience, you have to have that level of approach to generate revenue to actually address what's going on in NYCHA, which I represent the largest NYCHA contribution when I was in the Assembly.
Thank you. Senator Myrie.
Thank you. For the first 4 years in the state Senate, I represented Brownsville. I had 23 NYCHA developments. I would walk in those hallways, go into the apartments, yell at NYCHA for not making the repairs, and I drafted legislation that would help speed up those repairs. That law is on the books right now, in effect, requiring the city to work with utility companies and to work with NYCHA in order to restore service as quickly as possible. But this is a problem that has spanned many administrations and have spanned both Democrat and Republican administrations, where we have not received the federal investment that we deserve, nor have we received state and city investment. So I think we have to get creative about this solution. I think we have to, with full resident control and not a single displacement of a NYCHA resident, consider what infill would look like in order to generate the revenue that is needed to meet the demand.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to one of two lightning round questions. It's a yes or no, just down the line. Talking about rent freeze, which I know we've heard some about from some of you so far, but it's the season for RGB, so we want to hear your latest opinions on this. I'm going to start with Mr. Tilson. Ask you first, would you support a rent freeze for first this year and second all years of your mayoralty? Mr. Chilson.
No and no. It will exacerbate the problem.
Will exacerbate the problem. Okay. Mr. Stringer?
I'll support a rent freeze as long as the data suggests that it is accurate that tenants deserve a rent freeze.
And what's your take on the data so far this year? There's been a
I
couple
think
reports.
you do it on a yearly basis. That's the way to do it, so you do the right thing as mayor.
Senator Ramos?
I would support a rent freeze this year, and I would make sure that we're on a path to reduce costs for landlords so that we can provide a rent freeze every year.
Senator Myrie?
I'm going to appoint members to the Rent Guidelines Board that will take into consideration the plight of tenants and working class New Yorkers. We cannot balance the cost on their backs. And so I think what has already been indicated this year, that landlord costs are going up, that cannot be put on the back of the renters. And that is the approach I would have in years going forward.
So no rent freeze this year?
Right.
Okay. Controller?
For this year, yes, I think the data supports it. Net operating income was up dramatically last year, and it's grown a lot over time. I think for this year, the data supports it, but I'm not going to forward commit. I want to keep rents down as low as they can, making sure that landlords can do repairs and pay the super arrays and keep the heat on, and I'll look at it every year.
Mr. Blake?
Yes, in the first year. The extension is in assessing. If we actually listen to David and others like Jennifer Jones-Austin, we voted on true cost of living, but Mayor Adams actually has not implemented it. So we have to actually understand that data to then determine where we move forward. But in the affordability crisis that we're in right now in New York City, we cannot tell New Yorkers we're going to increase your rent rate stabilizer. It would be wrong to do so.
Yes for this year, to be decided for future years.
To be decided because we have not actually implemented what New Yorkers voted on for true cost of living to have a better assessment of what the cost would be.
And Speaker Adams?
I actually agree almost verbatim with Mr. Blake in what he just says. We do not have an assessment yet of what that's going to be, but because of the affordability crisis, I would say yes to this year with the stipulation that there should be no rent freeze that should ever harm the renters. So I would want that looked at also. I would hate to see any type of retaliation due to a rent freeze that affected our renters.
Could you just say what you mean by that, retaliation from a rent freeze?
Many ways that our renters can tell you what the retaliation could possibly be. Could possibly be anything from making sure that the heat wasn't on, to the water wasn't running, to anything else that quality of life would affect for a renter's quality of life. Those things may be retaliatory depending on the landlord that we're looking at or the situation that our renters may be in.
Thank you.
Our second question. In late March, the HUD Secretary issued a memo outlining the Federal Housing Agency's plan to share information about mixed status families with ICE. Would you direct the city's housing agencies to collaborate with the federal government in this way? And we're going to start with you, Speaker Adams.
Jeff, I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? You're a little low.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Is this a lightning round or
Yes.
a 1 minute question?
Yeah, no, just a quick question. I'll start over. In late March, the HUD Secretary issued a memo outlining the Federal Housing Agency's plan to share information about mixed immigration status families with ICE. Would you direct the city's housing agencies to collaborate with the federal government on this policy?
Absolutely not. I think that policy in itself would be discriminatory, and it would absolutely harm perhaps some of the more collaborative ways that we have already to handle our situations with migrants and anyone else in the city. So I would not support that.
Mr. Blake.
Hell no.
See?
Look, the reality is, as a son of immigrants, we have allowed Republicans to make this a conversation where scapegoating Latinos. If you're immigrating, Latino, Caribbean, African, Asian, we're all aligned in this together. ICE has no business in our places of worship, in our homes, in our schools, our community centers, and we will not collaborate with an unconstitutional order that is coming from DC.
Thank you. Mr. Lander.
40% of New Yorkers are foreign-born. 50% of New Yorkers live in mixed-status households, including 1 million children. This is the future of New York City, and there is no way in hell we're going to turn that information over to Donald Trump and his HUD secretary. No way.
Thank you. Senator Myrie?
Yeah, I'm a proud son of 2 Costa Rican immigrants who were not documented when they had me in Brooklyn, so absolutely not. And this is just another instance of an unconstitutional directive coming from this federal administration. And we got to step up and we got to go on the offensive. That is why I plan to hire more lawyers for our law department. I plan to use the 10th Amendment to fight back against this administration. We cannot give them an inch, not a single inch, because our republic and the foundations of our republic are at stake.
Thank you. Senator Ramos?
I will absolutely not be a collaborator. I think the separation of families only puts our city in a much more precarious situation. And Donald Trump and his administration is really threatening the stability of our city in many ways by the removal of critical funding that we depend on, like most recently FEMA flood mitigation money. And this is why I have a plan to be able to withdraw our federal taxes in response for the unlawful defunding of our programs that we depend on for federal dollars.
Thank you. Mr. Stringer?
Look, the next mayor cannot be part of the Trump administration like the one we have now. And we have to recognize that the children of this city, and I have 2 kids in the public schools, I know their friends, some of them are not in class anymore. And we know why. Because the moment that we could possibly separate a parent from a child is so horrific that the next mayor has got to stand up and lead this country in a way that has never been led before to get out of this terrible moment in time. We're going to have to be strategic, we're going to have to be smart, but we're going to have to be strong against the Trump administration.
Thank you. Mr. Tilson?
Yeah, I would not cooperate in any way with this lawless administration's attempts to terrorize our immigrant communities.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to our second section. Mr. Blake actually gave a preview of this, but CSS and FPWA commissioned a study that tried to show the true cost of living. Pretty striking results showing that 62% of New Yorkers do not have enough resources to make ends meet, and that number rises to 72% for households with children. This is also a struggle for not just low-income families, but moderate to middle-income families. And I think we all know that affordability is maybe the top, if not the top issue in this race. And this is a question for all the candidates. What is your most impactful proposal, if you could keep it to one, the one that you think will make the biggest difference to make New York City more affordable for everyday residents? And we'll start with Mr. Blake on this.
I'm going to do a 1 and a 1A because it's relevant.
As long as it's 1 minute.
We have to have local median income because AMI does not work. It is not working for us to have true affordability. When you have Westchester County and other counties that are impacting raising your costs, it is unfair for all of us as New Yorkers. And very specifically, if there's one thing that I would do, we would end credit scores being used for rent and home ownership applications. It is a racist, discriminatory practice that if you pay all of your other bills, but you missed a credit card bill or a phone bill 10 or 15 years ago, that would be the determination on someone giving you access to a home. When we see what's happening right now, child care and housing are the 2 fundamental expenses that dictate what's happening around affordability. For us to know it better, again, we listen to David, we listen to Jennifer and others, we understand the data has shown us this around the true cost of living, local median income to understand the numbers better, ending credit scores being used for home ownership and rent applications. That is how I would have a legacy with true affordability.
Thank you. Senator Mayoral.
We have a housing affordability crisis that we cannot get out of unless we have more supply. I want more affordable housing, and I want to do a lot of it quickly everywhere in this city. We also have a child care affordability crisis, and so I'd like to expand pre-K and 3K past 2:30 p.m. to 6 p.m., and I want free, high-quality after-school programming for every single family, every single kid in the city.
Thank you. Mr. Stringer.
Affordability has just gone through the roof, and so many people are leaving the city. Everyone said that the billionaires were leaving after COVID. No, they just bought a second home. The people who are leaving are the people, the middle class, the working poor of the city, who built this city and now can't be here. I have a couple of ideas that I think are realistic and we can get done in my first term as mayor. First is my tri-share child care plan, reduce child care costs by 50%. Second, I do think we should baseline finally 3K and pre-K. I do think we also, as Zellner mentioned, a after-school program. My idea is to continue after school till 4:30, give kids the resources they need to learn and succeed. But also, it is about housing, and we need to build the next generation of affordable housing. Think about what 1,000 lots in the right hands would do to lower the cost, to talk once again using words like low-income housing. It's not a dirty word. It's been part of it's been part of this city for generations, and we've gotten away from it. We now have fancy terms. I want to go back to the beginning and build the housing for the next generation. If we can reduce child care costs, we can build affordable housing, we can start to alleviate the burden and go back to a compact of this city and all of our people working together. You're welcome.
Thank you. I'm just going to use my prerogative here. Okay. Make this, if you guys can all answer in 30 seconds, I want to get all of you instead of just some of you. Do you support raising the minimum wage in New York City? What amount would you think the minimum wage should be? And then how would you deal with concerns that we hear from businesses about the raising of the minimum wage? So if you keep your answers to 30 seconds, I can get all of you in. So let's start with Mr. Tilson.
The minimum wage is currently already scheduled to go up in one more 50-cent increment, I believe, or two, one or two more. One? And then be inflation adjusted. I don't think that needs adjusting. What I do think, I want the minimum wage in the city to be north of $20, but through economic growth and businesses investing, creating jobs, and demand for labor, that's the right way to raise wages.
Okay. Mr. Stringer?
I would be for accelerating raising the minimum wage. The inflation costs of the city have just gotten too damn high, and I think we have to make sure that we have a safety net and a basic pay. But in terms of a specific, I think it would take some study and some understanding of some of the economic indicators when I take office.
How would you address concerns that raised by businesses?
Look, I think everything should be a trade-off, and I think that's a very fair question. We cannot especially allow our small businesses to bear the burden, and it is a burden for small businesses, but there are ways to solve that problem. Reduce fines and fees, streamline the bureaucracy, get rid of expediters at the Department of Buildings, reshape the agencies. So when you raise the minimum wage, you're also decreasing costs to small businesses, and you create a zero-sum game.
Thank you. Senator Ramos.
Well, I'm responsible for the last raise in the minimum wage. I'm proud to have done that as the chair of the Labor Committee in the Senate, and to have tied it to inflation for the first time in the history of New York State. I fought for 21.25. We arrived at that number based on having raised it from, by inflation from when we won $15 many years ago. No, Andrew Cuomo did not do that on his own. Workers took to the streets and fought very hard to win those $15. Had we pegged it to inflation then, we would be at 21.25 by 2026. That's not what Governor Hochul agreed to, so we do have to keep fighting. My philosophy is that the minimum wage should cover the bare minimum of the cost of living. The minimum wage should be a living wage. That being said, it's important to note that the mayor cannot raise the minimum wage. The minimum wage must be raised at the state level. And even so, I carry legislation right now to address the disparity between upstate and downstate, because it's not like the cost of living decreases significantly outside of the city. But here in the city, we have to get back out in those streets and march and make sure that we are getting a living wage.
Thank you. And we said support, and realize that the mayor doesn't have the power to do it unilaterally, but also, Mayor de Blasio did use his bullet bill pit involving the minimum wage. Senator Myrie.
Yeah, I'd be supportive if it was commensurate with support for our small business sector. This is an industry and sector that has been decimated by COVID. My mom had a small jewelry shop many, many years ago on Flatbush Avenue that she had to close down because she did not have access to capital. She did not have support, didn't know how to navigate the city bureaucracy. And so we have to be much more proactive in protecting and boosting our small businesses so that everyone can be lifted with that tie.
Thank you.
I supported Senator Ramos's original Raise Up New York proposal that included not just increase for inflation, but also productivity, and I'd like to see us get back to that. And in terms of showing that we can do it, I'd point to legislation that I successfully passed in the City Council that made us first city in the country to guarantee minimum pay for Uber and Lyft drivers, first city in the country to guarantee minimum pay for deliveristas, to give predictable, stable schedules to fast food workers and protect freelancers from wage theft. And each time somebody said, you're not going to have freelancers, you're not going to have fast food restaurants, you're not going to have Uber and Lyft drivers, you're not going to be able to get your food delivered. Every one of those things did not turn out to be true. There's more fast food, you can get delivery, you can get an Uber and Lyft driver. It's a great place to freelance. We do need to support small businesses, but we can support workers to earn what they deserve.
Thank you. Do you have a dollar amount?
Sorry?
Do you have a dollar amount?
Well, the formula was the one that was laid out in Senator Ramos's bill.
You agree with
that
that
would have been 2125 by next year, and I continue to support that.
Okay. Mr. Blake.
We need to go beyond minimum wage and stop with that approach. We need to figure out how to help people get to living wages. And in order to do that, while yes, you have to work with Albany in achieving that, I do believe that for companies that contract with New York City, there has to be an expectation that anyone that is working for them will be at a living wage status. And that we utilize, whether it be resources within the cash reserves, as well as significantly lowering their tax burden to help close that gap. You can then achieve the actual goal. Because too often the conversations we're having in New York City is how are we helping someone get to the bare minimum as opposed to actually have a chance to realize their dream.
Thank you.
In a $115 billion budget, we can find the funds to make this happen.
Thank you. Speaker Adams, 30 seconds.
Thank you. I'm going to try to keep it to the 30 seconds. I tend to agree with the former comptroller on this. We're going to have to realize what the data is. I definitely believe that there needs to be an increase, but we're going to have to follow the data in how we do this and at the same time protect our small businesses, which also was said that we've lost so much power through the pandemic and the loss of small businesses. We can't take a look at this thing in a nutshell, either or. We're going to have to figure this out and pair this together to make sure that both sides win. We've got to have a win-win in this, not just an increase at the expense of our small businesses.
I'm going to jump to a question on a guaranteed basic income. Speaker Adams, these programs have taken off across the country. We've heard you talk about the Bridge Project in the City Council. Would you support the city launching its own guaranteed income program? If so, who should benefit from it, and how would you pay for it? And I'll start with you, Speaker Adams.
I am already proposing that. That is the question of the hour, and it's got to be my last question. I apologize. I am proposing a guaranteed basic income program to prevent child poverty. So the folks that will be impacted to prevent child poverty and homelessness would be pregnant women, would be children, pregnant women, and also children aged 0 to 5. Also would be for youth. Ages 15 to 24, as well as youth aging out of foster care. So this would be a 3-year guaranteed income program. This would make sure that mothers had health care, that mothers and children had food. So we would take care of food insecurity as well. The city would fund this as well as private donors as well. We can do this. This model has already been proven. Annie just mentioned it. We've already started it in the City Council. I have 161 mothers already in this program. We find that over 63% that go through this program, 63% and above actually do not stay in the shelter system, which is what we want. We don't want to perpetuate life in shelter. We want to get them out, and that's exactly what happens when we give people a leg up. This program would be for 3 years, and it works.
Thank you. Mr. Blake, same question. Would you support a guaranteed basic income, and how would you fund it, and who should it target?
I want to separate it because I think Speaker Adams and I have been the only two to talk about guaranteed income in this way. I think there's a difference between guaranteed income and universal basic income. I've stated that I support guaranteed income to help people get to a threshold of exceeding, obviously, the challenge around living wages to that degree. Now, how do we pay for it? This goes back to the collective approach of what we laid out. When you know that you already have $2 billion that needs to be claimed back of unclaimed fees in particular apartments, a vacant apartment tax, assessing what's currently happening within the budget, not just the $1.4 billion that comes to NYPD overtime, but is it possible for us to say that at $115 billion budget we can't find funding to actually address these concerns? In terms of the threshold of the individuals, the implementation of the true cost of living assessment will help us determine to for the individuals, not just experiencing poverty, because poverty by its own metric is insufficient, but the collectiveness of being unable to pay for all expenses in New York City. We don't know that answer as of yet because Eric Adams was so focused on trying to stay out of jail, he actually didn't implement the policies itself. And so if we did that, we would then know how many people we need to help to then be able to close that gap, give them a guaranteed income for that first 4 years, and then assess, as we've seen in Connecticut, Stockton, and in St. Louis, this can be achieved in New York City.
Thank you. Controller Lander.
I love the guaranteed income model, and I think the pilots that are starting are really exciting. To scale it at the scale that it would need to be to get anywhere close to universal is just an expense beyond what we can afford. There are some other models I really like here, like NYC Kids Rise, which is putting deposits in the savings accounts of every New York student that helps people start to save for college and the future. And that one I think can get to a lot more people. And I'll just, I've tried to be real clear what I think my top priorities are, especially at a time when we're going to be facing the likelihood of an economic downturn thanks to Trump's tariffs and big budget cuts. So my big commitments are ending street homelessness for people with serious mental illness in New York City, a dramatic increase in affordable housing, and getting to universal child care, which could help families save $25,000 a year. And those are the things, and that is going to cost the resources that I can find. So love this model, but can't commit to find the money for it on top of those things in the times we're facing.
Thank you. Lastly on this, Senator Ramos.
Well, I'm a big fan of a jobs guarantee. I want every single New Yorker who wants to work to be able to find a good job. It used to be that New Yorkers just needed one good job in order to keep a roof over their heads, raise their family, put food on the table, and people even had a little bungalow out in Long Beach or something like that. And many of those people even just had a high school diploma. That's the way things used to be. We need a return to basic decency, and I believe that in tackling all of the crises that we're facing, we can create those jobs, whether it's the affordable housing crisis, including skyrocketing homelessness. A third of the people living in shelters actually have a job. So it's not just that the rent is too damn high, it's that the wages are too damn low. And it's also about building a union climate economy, building a care economy that talks about universal child care and elder care. If we actually invest in the economic sectors of the future, we can guarantee every New Yorker one good job so that they can be home to have dinner with their families.
Mr. Stringer, actually, your thoughts on this quickly, if you can.
Yeah, there is a tendency at these mayoral forums as the evening goes on to just keep laying on the money. So we have a $115 billion budget. By the time we leave, we've already spent $200 billion. But that's okay because aspiration and ideas matter. But I'll side with the current controller on this one. To scale it up would probably be cost prohibitive. But to target programs and not sacrifice programs, I think is something that an experienced steward of the city's finances as mayor should continue to explore and work on. Bring the ideas, but also we have to measure in a realistic way what we can or can't do, especially in the era of Trump, especially when the state budget and Hochul becomes more conservative. I do think we have to think strategically about how we get people the resources they need without breaking the bank.
10 seconds, Mr. Blake, to respond to that.
I'm just saying, we've had both comptrollers saying these things are unrealistic, but yet saying we can have universal child care in other entities. And let's be very clear, the question was around guaranteed income, which is separate from UBI, which is a targeted approach. We are laying out how to pay for this, but the approach that's being stated is it is unrealistic to do so, but yet they're equally both saying we can have universal child care.
Do we have time?
Sure, quickly.
Be honest and clear about the priorities I have, so everyone will know what I would do with the
Understand,
resources
but
if I had the first.
both have stated that it's not feasible.
Well, when you've reviewed the city's finances for a very long time and the positions we've had, we also have to speak truth to people and not promise them things that probably cannot happen without sacrificing other programs. And by the way, you're not wrong in your approach. it's about every mayor, and this is a great thing about being an executive, you get to propose a budget with your hopes and dreams. You have yours, I may have mine, but you can't do it all. That's just the reality.
All right, we'll end it there.
Thank you. We'll move to a quick rapid-fire question. I'm wondering, this is for all the candidates, a yes or no answer. Would you support expanding the Fair Fares program, which provides discounted fares to New Yorkers, transit fares to New Yorkers, whose income reach up to 200% of the poverty level? Let's start with Senator Ramos.
I would absolutely want to expand the Fair Fares program and have a much more targeted outreach program. I mean, the challenge is the utilization rate of the Fair Fares program is very low.
Thank you. Mr. Blake?
We need presumptive eligibility.
Yes, and I can't wait to hear Scott and Brad's answers on this as well.
Let's go to Mr. Stringer.
Yes, I do. Proud of it.
And Mr. Lander, I'll fill your wish. There you go.
I was proud to work with David Jones and CSS to fight to win the Fair Fares program in the first place.
Me too.
And I damn well agree we can expand it to 200%, yes.
Mr. Tilson?
Yes, I agree.
Senator Myrie?
Yes.
Thank you.
Next rapid fire
Just because you can't pay for everything doesn't mean you shouldn't pay for something.
I just want to be clear, however, they both indicated it was unrealistic, so.
We've heard all your opinions. We appreciate it. Last rapid fire question. Would you advocate in Albany to raise taxes on the wealthy using the very large Blake pulpit of the mayor's office? We'll start with Mr. Blake on this. Yes or no?
Yes, specifically with a vacant apartment tax.
Thank you. Controller Lander.
I like to focus on what we're getting. So if we're going to get universal child care, we're absolutely going to have Albany increase revenue on the wealthiest New Yorkers. And if the SALT cap is eliminated in Washington, then that's another opportunity to say we need to be able to plug some holes. But the point is to say, here's what we need to pay for and show people what we're getting, and then bring along the need to increase that revenue progressively.
Do you have a percentage in mind?
I mean, getting to 2K to do it, to paying for universal child care for 2-year-olds, will statewide will exceed $10 billion. So that's the amount of revenue that we will need to find from the wealthiest New Yorkers.
Senator Myrie.
Yeah, I think we first have to go after the taxes that are already owed to the city. We have to hire more personnel for our OMB to get those taxes that are owed. And I think all options have to be on the table as we face down a federal administration that is hostile to this city. And I'd be very willing to work with my governor and partners in the legislature to get that done.
So open to it? Is that fair?
I'm sorry?
Open to it?
Yes.
Okay. Senator Ramos.
I've already effectively worked with Governor Hochul to expand child care eligibility from 200% to 275% to 400% of the federal poverty line. And I want to pay for my universal child care plan, which is the bill I carry in the Senate, by increasing the payroll tax that can't be passed down to workers for the top 5% of businesses, which would largely be the financial sector in New York State. And I'm also a very big fan of my mark-to-market tax, which would tax unrealized capital gains of only 135 people, the billionaires that call New York home, where we would generate $33 billion within the first year of implementation of that tax.
Mr. Stringer.
We've got money.
When I was in the State Assembly, I believe I introduced with then Senator Franz Leich the first bill to increase taxes on the wealthiest New Yorker to stave off a real crisis during the Pataki administration. If you look him up, he was a governor, for those of you who were not there at the time. But I do think that what we see right now is a balance of understanding what we can pay for and what we can pay for. And by that I mean we have certain priorities that have to be realized in Albany, the city. One of the things that I did not do as controller was give Bill de Blasio unfettered access to $5 billion in borrowing capacity, because when I asked him what was the money going to be used for, he said he had no idea, but he wanted to have the authority. So when you go to raise revenue, you also have to have a specific agenda and realize it, because you can't keep coming back and back legislature's not going to go along with it. So I think, again, it takes a certain amount of experience, but you know where I started in my career. It was the Like to Stringer bill.
Again, open to it. Is that fair?
Look, I'm open to anything, but to me, that's not the question. The question is open to what?
Mr. Tilson.
We already have the highest combined tax burden in the country. If we try and increase it from here, we're just giving Florida a gift. People are mobile, and we are the wealthiest city combined with the highest tax burden, so we have by far the biggest city budget, and we need to spend that money better and more efficiently rather than further making ourselves uncompetitive.
So no.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move on to our healthcare section. We're going to start with a question about maternal health. Black women are 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related causes than white women. Black women are also twice as likely to have a birth with late or no prenatal care at all when compared to white women. I'm wondering what you would do as mayor to address the maternal mortality crisis that is being experienced by black and brown women in New York City. Mr. Lander.
So H&H has just got a huge opportunity to step up here, and thanks to some things that Brooklyn Borough President Antonio Reynoso has supported, Woodhull Hospital is taking really some significant steps forward. That's outreach, so before people are in the hospital, they're getting more of that prenatal care, and then that's a ton of support that they're providing both in the hospital and through those birthing clinics. So I'd like to see that expanded across the H&H network, and not just to the 11 public hospitals, but to the FQHCs and the community-based clinics that they run.
Thank you. Senator Myrie.
Yeah, so the only state-run city hospital is in my current Senate district, SUNY Downstate, that serves a population that is in the heart of the black maternal mortality crisis. The governor proposed to close this down, and I was very proud to stand with my community to refuse that and to say we must provide not just healthcare service, but world-class healthcare service to this community. As the next mayor, I would like to use our bully pulpit to expand Medicaid coverage for doula services. I have, in the state Senate, introduced the Chisholm Chance Act, which is meant to be a healthcare hub using organizations, using birthing centers, and including our hospitals to ensure that we're providing wraparound services and holistic services for our black women. I'd like to continue that effort as the next mayor.
Senator Ramos, thank you.
This is an issue near and dear to my heart. It's a very big issue for not only black women, but indigenous women. My mom had a terrible time giving labor to me, and she was actually pronounced clinically dead for 3 minutes when she gave birth to my little sister at Elmhurst Hospital. And she was brought back to life through being shocked by the staff there. And I have to say that the American way of giving birth, being the only person on this stage right now who's given birth twice, is completely out of lockstep and lacks cultural competency for the way we in our cultures are used to giving birth. And that starts with prenatal care and making sure that we have access to good food, and of course making sure that we have the right birthing centers in the communities where they're needed most, with doulas and everyone who is needed to have the best possible birthing experience. That's what women deserve, instead of the highly medicated way in which we're told we have to push our children out.
And Mr. Blake.
My mother in Jamaica would always remind us that Planned Parenthood was the first opportunity for all protections, not just when it came to choice, but for black maternal health. So let's be clear. First, we have to make sure that our funding is keeping sites open for all of our women so that women have the protection that you need. Second, it will continue the work that we did with diversity in medicine, because if you have more black and brown doctors, nurses, and those are part of the medical field, it will increase the opportunity for more of our women to have a chance. Third, we have to expand the conversation around the black maternal health crisis to make sure that it's not just doulas but midwives that are part of the process to be supported collectively. Fourth, it's about the intentionality around increased language access, because too often you are going to a doctor, you're going to someone, and you're actually not having someone communicate with you in the language that's actually supported to you. We are in a society right now where men are trying to tell women what is best for their bodies, in particular black women. We're not going to tolerate that. We're not going to accept that. We're going to fund you and support you and empower you so that you are able to actually realize the dreams of what having a child would be. My wife, our girls, it is important for our families, and that is the type of mayor I would be if you give me the opportunity.
Thank you.
All right. The next question on Medicaid cuts. These proposed cuts would have a profound impact on New York City, where about half the population gets health care coverage from Medicaid. As mayor, how would you protect and strengthen the city's health care safety net to ensure that no one is left behind without essential coverage? What tools, as mayor, would you be able to utilize to do so? Starting with Senator Mayoral.
So we have, on the state level, been fighting to increase the Medicaid reimbursement rate. Many of our safety net hospitals rely almost exclusively on this Medicaid reimbursement rate, but because of that, they are at a disadvantage for privately more affluently funded hospitals. And so we have to increase. We were able to achieve a slight increase in that reimbursement rate. We have to do a lot more on that front, and I'd be advocating for that as mayor. I also think it is important to go on the offense when it comes to the Medicaid cuts that are potentially coming. This federal administration has proposed over $800 billion in cuts over the next 10 years. 6 out of 10 New Yorkers rely on Medicaid. This would be devastating for the entire city, and I would be using the 10th Amendment to sue in the event that they would try to claw back any money that has already been allocated to the city.
Mr. Tilson.
Yeah, I think realistically at this point this is more a federal issue. The Trump administration is, I think, going to try and slash funding for Medicare and Medicaid, and that would have devastating consequences for our city and state. One of the many reasons I've been fighting Trump and Trumpism for since he came down that escalator 10 years ago. I think it's a disgrace that the U.S. is the only developed country in the world that doesn't have universal basic health care. So as mayor, I will do everything in my power to make sure that we get full federal funding that we need, and also to make sure every New Yorker has basic health care.
Senator Ramos.
Well, I'm not only scared of Trump slashing our Medicare funding, I'm also scared of Andrew Cuomo becoming my mayor because he already slashed Medicare funding during the pandemic. And so I'm actively fighting against both. I guess I'm Scott's number 2. But this is why I'm actively, fighting against both. We can't trust Andrew Cuomo to keep us healthy, and we can't trust that Trump is going to increase the 30 cents to the dollar in the Medicare reimbursement rate that's happening right now. And this is why I don't want to give Trump our taxes if it means a lapse in service, especially for our most vulnerable New Yorkers. So making sure that there is continuous service is really something that I'm committed to achieving, and I'm hoping that Governor Kathy Hochul will be my closest partner in achieving that.
Mr. Stringer, the same question to you. If you want to make a cross-endorsement announcement, you can do so as well.
Well, we're on.
We work together,
We've done some stuff together. But just to Jessica's point, you got to know what you're getting into on June 24th. You do not want to support somebody who sent this city reeling when it comes to a $2.5 billion cut Medicaid. Why would we go back to that chaos, especially during this Trump moment in time? And look, I think what I think I bring to this table is a certain amount of fiscal acumen to figure out a way to stave off the worst cuts to our hospital system by doing a couple of things. One, we definitely need a $500 million rainy day fund from the state, $500 matched by the city, so that as we see these healthcare cuts come from the federal government, as they look at our budget codes and they separate the city and state money, they take the federal money, we're going to have a system to replenish, at least for the next 16 months until we get to the congressional elections and we start to dismantle the Trump agenda. But the other thing we have to also do long term is the mayor has to lead on health care. That means on January 1st or a week after, I'm going to bring in all the hospitals, all the insurance execs. We're going to sit around the table and we're going to say, you are going to reduce costs because you are shaking down our seniors, our families, and enough is
Thank
enough.
you.
We need a mayor to lead on this issue.
Thank you.
I like this better than the clapping, to be honest. This is...
Thank you all. We're going to move on and talk a bit about mental health. New York City is currently dealing with a significant mental health crisis, which, as we know, was exacerbated by the pandemic. Many residents were left struggling to get access to care. If you were elected mayor, how would your administration address the growing mental health crisis in New York City, particularly ensuring that there is equitable access to care, care for underserved communities, and also how would you tackle the shortage of inpatient psychiatric beds and community-based mental health beds? It's a question for all candidates. Please keep your answers as brief as possible. We'll start with Mr. Blake.
Well, unlike Andrew Cuomo, I won't cut psychiatric beds and other things that occurred and put us in this crisis. Now, specifically, what would we do? We have to have increased funding when it comes to overdose prevention centers, so we can actually provide the support for our mental health challenges that are happening right now. Second, we need to draw down more funding on opioid settlement funds so that our nonprofits and other providers can actually provide the help that they need to for our individuals who have that help. Third, we have to be serious about implementing involuntary confinement, which is already on the books right now. If someone is a serious harm to themselves or the community, help them get the help that they need in a very serious way. But lastly, we should not be having cops trying to address mental health concerns and public safety. You should have mental health professionals actually addressing that in a very real way. And so if you take it in that regard, increase awareness around the 988 hotline, actually have more individuals that are trained in this regard, then you can be serious about addressing the mental health concerns that are existing in our communities right now.
Thank you. Mr. Tilson.
I support the issue of these few days or week is one of the big things holding up the state budget is the involuntary commitment threshold that Governor Hochul is pushing for. I support changing it to allowing involuntary commitment by professionals if someone is deemed to be unable to care for themselves. I also do not think it should be allowed for anyone to be sleeping outside overnight in our public spaces. This is not to criminalize this, street homelessness, but rather to give mental health professionals primarily who are dealing with this the tools, two important tools that they need to help the people who in many cases do not have the capacity to help themselves.
Thank you. Senator Ramos?
I want to call for a mental health emergency on day one of my administration, because that would allow me to access different funding streams so that I can prioritize the reopening of the mental health institutions that Andrew Cuomo closed, and so that we can get serious about building the workforce pipeline that's needed. We don't have enough social workers. We don't have enough cognitive and behavioral therapists, and we definitely don't have them in all of the languages that New Yorkers speak. So being able to do so by weaving mental health services into every aspect of our lives, from schools to workplaces to our city hospitals, who shouldn't just focus on physical health, but should focus on mental health, especially in those of our communities where we need to destigmatize talking to a therapist. Nobody needs to know why you're there. What's important is that you were able to talk to someone, and that we're able to diagnose folks and make sure that we are making all of that medicine and treatment affordable for New Yorkers, so that we're treating those who are struggling with severe mental illness, but of course leading with housing first, but also even expanding mental health courts and making sure that the city is upholding alternatives to incarceration.
Thank you. Mr. Lander?
The number one commitment in my campaign is to end street homelessness for people with serious mental illness. We can do that in New York City, and it requires mayoral leadership and a coordinated continuum of care, but mostly what it requires is a policy called Housing First, in which instead of saying to people, you can go to shelter, or we're going to sweep you to hospital or jail,
we've got an SRO or a supportive housing unit for you, and when you offer people that, they take it and they're able to stay stably housed 70 to 90% of the time. It's working in Denver and Houston and Salt Lake City. We're talking about 2,000 people sleeping on the streets of our city with serious mental illness. We have 2,500 vacant supportive housing units and SRO units tonight. And so if we use housing first, we can dramatically reduce and even effectively end street homelessness of people with serious mental illness in this city, and that will be a safer city and a much more humane one.
Thank you. Senator Myrie?
I'm in therapy. I like to say this and try to destigmatize. I would not be the leader that I am. I could not be a husband. I cannot be a public servant without that therapy. I think we need to name it and call it out when we have the opportunity to do so. I released a Black agenda a few weeks ago, and part of that included providing free, quality mental health access for our young Black men in this city who I think are in dire need of that type of access. I also think that it's important that the city provide, we have to put some money up to incentivize true diagnoses when people are in the hospital. Right now, the incentives for you to keep someone and diagnose them and put them on a real path to recovery are out of whack, and I think we have to put that money up first. There are some models that work very well. The clubhouse model in this city is something that should be expanded. What we do with folks after taking them out of the public square is just as important. We cannot keep sending people to Rikers or just sending them to the emergency room where they cycle out or get worse. We have to stabilize people, put them on a path to recovery.
Thank you. Mr. Stringer?
Look, I agree with just about everything that was said, but here's the real deal. This city government, as presently constituted, couldn't run a two-car funeral. And I say this in all seriousness. You want to put mental health professionals on our trains, and we should, to help the people who are dying in front of us when we take the train, when I take my son to school, and see people not committing a crime, not doing anything wrong, except existing in a way that leads to death. We need to rebuild the city agencies and break down the silos of all the agencies responsible for developing these programs. How do we do that? First, we cut police overtime in half. We take that money and we put it into a mental health fund that hires the people we need and sets the tone and policy that will actually help people. Yes, we need housing first. Yes, we need to make sure that people are no harm to themselves. Yes, we need the 11 city hospitals to do more and step up. Yes, we need funding from Albany. But the fact is that right now we have an empty government of deputy commissioners, of middle managers, and the whole place is empty. So the next mayor has to have the experience, the understanding of where the agencies are and where the bodies are buried, and literally rebuild the government, because we're not going to be able to realize the hopes and dreams that we discussed tonight unless we put management in place for the first time in a very long time.
Thank you. We're going to move on to criminal justice, which is our last section of the evening. New York City is legally required to close Rikers Island by 2027. Doesn't look like it's going to happen. Both construction and the actual jail numbers don't seem compatible with that deadline. Do you believe that Rikers should close as a baseline? And what will you do to speed construction and shrink the jail numbers? And we'll start with Senator Myrie on that.
Yes, Rikers needs to close. We have been treating it as a de facto mental health institution, and it is a great stain on this city, not just in this administration, but for too long. And so, yes, we have to close it. This mayor has shown very little interest in ensuring that we meet the timeline that is currently in front of us. And as reported by the most recent commission on this, we are going to blow past that, and there's some things that we can do in order to get us back on track. I would like to see some of those recommendations come to fruition. We have to be very focused administratively in bringing the stakeholders back to the table to say, how can we get back on track to make sure that this happens? And that is something that I'd be doing as mayor.
Thank you. Comptroller Lander.
Yes, I absolutely support the closure of Rikers. Was proud to fight for it and to vote for it in the city council. But I'll be honest, I'm going to get it done in my second term as mayor. That's what it's going to take to get the 4 borough-based jails built. And then 2 big next steps. First,
On any given day at Rikers right now, about 1,500 people have serious mental illness, and it is especially disastrous for them. Come out worse than they came in. Eric Adams was supposed to build 360 secure treatment beds in a partnership between DOC and H&H. Literally not one of those units has been built, so I will get those 360 built. We probably need, 500 more than that. And then the other thing is case processing times have grown dramatically since before the pandemic. That's about why there's about 1,500 people there. If we were just back at the case processing times we had in 2019, we'd have somewhere between 1,000 and 1,500 fewer people. So I did a report on this, wrote a letter to the chief administrative judge, and we'll work closely with him because those 3 steps: get the borough-based jails built, get the secure treatment beds up, and reduce case processing times back to where they were in 2019. That's how we'll close Rikers.
Mr. Stringer.
Well, I was the first elected official, the first, to say shut down Rikers. And the reason that I was for closing it is I went there before it became fashionable to visit. I was there voluntarily, by the way. I know you think. But what I saw there was so horrific and so dangerous, and basically innocent people languishing in the most disgusting, violent conditions. And so I do believe we need federal intervention. Not from this president, but we do need somebody to straighten out the corruption there. It has gone on too long and too many innocent lives were lost. When I was controller, I settled a lot of innocent cases with Ken Thompson, the district attorney, before litigation. And the worst case that I settled was for a lot of money to a woman whose son, a homeless vet, died of overheating at Rikers. And I looked at her and said, "Ma'am, on behalf of the city, I apologize." And she just looked at me and says, "I don't want your money. I want my baby back." And there's a lot of parents out there who want their babies back. And I'm going to get them back as mayor to bring that home and close Rikers once and for all.
Thank you. Mr. Blake.
Someone who's had family at Rikers is the person who represented Khalif Browder and his family when I was in the assembly. Let's be very clear that we should first be focused on, yes, I'm going to directly answer your question, we got to shut down Rikers, but let's be clear, let's help people not get to Rikers in the first place. How do you actually help people have jobs and higher wages in the first place? How do you address mental health concerns in the first place? How do you have better schools in the first place? Maybe if we weren't arresting kids for dime bags, but make sure they had books in their book bags, we're not going to Rikers in the first place. Then it's an inhumane space that's there. Rikers Island is the second highest concentration of mental health concerns in the country, second to only LA County right now. We have to be serious that you have to change the conditions that are there. Then on the back end, yes, you have to build borough-based jails that are connected to the courthouses. You have to actually make sure people are then being rehabilitated, because fundamentally, if you are having crimes that are happening because of larceny and stealing and robbing, maybe you help people before they get into that condition there. Too often the conversations are only rooted in what are we doing to these black and brown people when they were locked up? Help them before they get there in the first place. That's the type of Mayor Blake I would be.
Thank you.
Okay.
Can I take a different opinion on Rikers?
Please, Mr. Chilson.
Rikers is an abomination. We can all agree on that. I do not see any way to safely close it, at least based on anything close to current numbers. The City Council 5 years ago, when crime was trending downward, only budgeted to build 4 borough-based jails with roughly 4,000 beds. The problem is Rikers today has 7,100 inmates, and I don't see any way to get down. What do you do with the 3,000 that would have to be released unless we can change this? So I would also point out that there's been an increase in Rikers of about 10% this year. This year, murders are down 35% in this city. The police have started enforcing the extra 10% at Rikers are chronic recidivists of lower level crimes. The reason you have plexiglass across all of your drugstores is the police had stopped enforcing low level crimes like that. So I think we are going to have a system in which we will have a smaller and rebuilt Rikers that will be much safer. Combined, so we will have 5 jails in this city, not 4.
Can I answer the question since I'm the only one who hasn't?
Sure, Senator Ramos.
I think anybody who's visited Rikers Island can see that it's a 16th century dungeon, and it is not fair that we just throw people in there waiting for trial and then just throw away the key. I do think it's cruel and unusual punishment. And I think we do a very poor job of addressing mental health, providing young people, especially our young men, with jobs, with good jobs. I also think we do a poor job of utilizing other means of dealing with those who are awaiting trial, like ankle monitors, which are far more cost effective than paying $500,000 for someone to be housed at Rikers Island while they're waiting for their trial. We also need courts to speed up. I mean, I've visited Rikers and have run into young men that I grew up with who have been waiting for their trial for 3 years. It gets adjourned, it gets pushed down, and they deserve a fair day in court. So we really need to get our criminal legal system under wraps and actually uphold the rights outlined in the Bill of Rights.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to clarify, Mr. Stringer, when you say federal intervention, are you in favor of receivership for Rikers Island? Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to stop and frisk, staying in the criminal justice realm. Under Mayor Adams, stop and frisk has surged, though the numbers are still far below the 2011 high. A federal monitor who has audited stops by the NYPD's neighborhood safety teams over a 6-month period in 2022 concluded that about a quarter of the stops were unlawful. I'm wondering, what would you do as mayor to ensure that the NYPD is performing legal stop and frisks, which I'd just like to point out that the monitor's reports have repeatedly said that the NYPD is performing a legal stop and frisk. So what would you do as mayor to enforce the legal use of stop and frisk? Let's start with Senator Myrie.
After this was ruled unconstitutional in 2013, we saw historic lows in crime after there was a change in the approach and the leadership that instructed the NYPD to abide by what the court had told them. So this false credence of a narrative that you have to stop and frisk, you have to over-police our communities in order for us to remain safe is exactly that. It is false. I'm born and raised in this city where I had to hold two truths together in my mind, that yes, I could potentially be the victim of gun violence, but I could also be the victim of police brutality. We can be safe and hold the police accountable. We can do those things at the same time, but it's going to take a mayor that actually understands that and wants to get that done and has the leadership to direct the police to do that.
Thank you. Senator Ramos?
Stop and frisk is unconstitutional. Full stop. And I can't tell you how humiliating it is to be stopped and frisked. It happened to me when I was 19, and I'll be damned if that's going to happen to either one of my sons as they're growing up in this city. We have to be serious about public safety. That is not a way to be serious about public safety. And making sure that the NYPD is actually properly trained to know what people's constitutional rights are, the right to search and seizure, is really paramount, especially after an administration, the Adams administration, which has defunded crossfire training and implicit bias training, amongst others, for the NYPD because he's so busy giving money to his cronies and his friends with no bid contracts for robocops and drones. We have to get the NYPD to be a serious professional organization. And I have to say that I do fear also having a mayor that perhaps the NYPD won't listen to. Because I also think that if they were to go rogue, it would also be a dangerous situation for the city.
Which among your colleagues do you think the NYPD would not listen to?
I don't have any one person in particular. It's a general statement.
Okay.
But nice try.
Thank you. That's what I get paid for. Mr. Tilson.
Let's put some facts around this. Stop and frisk declined by 98% from its peak in 2011 to its low a few years ago. It has since roughly doubled, so it's now down 96%. Stopping someone where there's reasonable suspicion of criminal activity is legal. Randomly stopping young men of color generally is illegal if it's random, if there is no reasonable suspicion. So you have to balance two things. Where cops are behaving illegally and just randomly stopping people with racial bias, etc., that needs to be punished and shouldn't be allowed. I do think that giving cops who tend to know their communities and some leeway in terms of reasonable suspicion, and I think one of the reasons that murders are down 35% this year is in part because cops are using reasonable suspicion somewhat more. That's why you've seen an increase in what are called stop and frisks, but stop and frisks are not necessarily illegal. About a quarter of the stop and frisks that have occurred in the past year with the latest data resulted in an arrest. So cops tend to, I think that's a pretty reasonable number, actually.
Well, the Federal Monitor ruled that a quarter of the stops were conducted in an illegal fashion.
Oh, meaning I have it reversed at 75%?
Well, this is from the data from 2022, where the Federal Monitor found that at least a quarter of the stops were unlawful.
Okay, meaning 75% of the time they found somebody with a gun or some that it turned out to be.
No, it doesn't mean that.
No. And black and brown people are disproportionately stopped and frisked. That is not okay.
The 75%, they're not necessarily finding a weapon on someone. It's about the number of legal stops.
Right. Whether the stop was legally acceptable. We'll move on. Mr. Lander.
At the height of the era of discriminatory stop and frisk, I teamed up with Jumaane Williams and the City Council. We passed the Community Safety Act. That strengthened the city's prohibition on bias-based profiling, created the Office of the NYPD Inspector General. We saw those dramatic decreases in discriminatory stop and frisk. And as Senator Myrie said, we saw dramatic decreases in crime. So you can have fair policing and safer neighborhoods. A big part of what got scaled up at that moment was the city's crisis management system, or community violence interrupters on the ground, targeted to the neighborhoods where we have a lot of shootings. Only about 4% of the city's 120,000 blocks account for effectively all of the city's shootings over the last decade. So those are the neighborhoods where we should be putting community violence interrupters. Jumaane and I teamed up on a study of those groups that showed significant decreases in shootings, but also ways that we could be paying those groups on time, helping them coordinate more effectively with their precincts, and yielding real continued safety outcomes without going back to the era of stop and frisk.
Thank you. Mr. Blake?
You're listening to some answers for folks who have clearly not been engaged in police brutality. So as someone who has had cops mess with me twice, stop and frisk does not lead to you feeling safer. We know this, whether if I'm in the Bronx or in central Brooklyn or southeast Queens, doesn't matter where you're at in the city right now. So to your question on what do you do from here, first, there still is not a good reason why we don't have a registry for officers who engaged in police misconduct elsewhere on why on earth do they have a job here. Second, when someone identifies actually does these activities, they should be suspended without pay immediately. If it happens with an additional infraction, they should be terminated. That is how you operate with any coherent manner. Let's be very clear. They are going after black and brown folk. As a tall, dark-skinned black man who walks up and down the street, I should not be afraid on if I could get home because someone thinks I'm a threat. That is what's happening right now in New York City. And if you are serious about holding people accountable, the last piece on this is that every single officer must have a body camera on for any and all activities that they're doing. It will increase immediate accountability and be able to track what is happening in real time so that you don't have black and brown kids terrified on if they can get home alive.
Thank you. Mr. Stringer.
Well, I agree with Michael Blake. When I wear a suit and tie going to work, I never worried during Giuliani time that I was going to get stopped or frisked. Couldn't happen to someone who looks like me. In fact, the city was about this kind of racism and discrimination, not just with policing, but I remember to this day, a friend of mine worked at a major law firm, had a massively good suit on with a tie, African-American friend of mine. We went out, we were hanging out. At the end of the night, he turned to me. I was in jeans and a t-shirt. I worked for Jerry Nadler, the assemblyman, made no money, looked that way. And he turned to me and said, do me a favor, get me my cab tonight, because people wouldn't stop. So I was the first elected official in New York City to say enough and stop and frisk, because my lived life experience of my friends and the people in the community I grew up in Washington Heights, this was all too common. And we cannot ever go back to this. And when I'm mayor, the first thing I say to the police commissioner is, it's done. It's over. No more excuses. We're going to police in a constitutional way. We're going to get rid of the criminals in a constitutional way. But we will never target a young child based on skin color. I'm tired of grandparents being more worried about whether their black or brown son goes out for a carton of milk at 10 o'clock at night or 9 o'clock at night and goes to the local store and is more afraid of a police interaction than a criminal interaction. These days are going to be over when I'm mayor.
Is there any specific policy you would do to the police commissioner to make sure that they enforce legal stops?
We're going to give these reports, and look, I really do disagree with my friend Whit. I mean, 25% is an outrageous number. And all you have to do as mayor is say, end it. Not allowed. Will not happen. And that's what we have to get to in this city. The judge has ruled. These stops are unconstitutional, and they should not be allowed.
Thank you.
A question for a couple of you on NYPD overtime, which hit $1.1 billion last year, last fiscal year. Regularly over budget. We've heard from mayors before saying we're going to bring it down. Routinely exceeds the budgeted amount. Also, lawsuit settlements in 2024 for NYPD misconduct cost taxpayers around $82 million. What specifically will you do to control NYPD spending in these categories, or others, if you want to add others? And we'll start with Senator Ramos.
Well, I want to do two things. First and foremost, overtime pay for the NYPD has to be negotiated in the collective bargaining agreement. So having a mayor who knows her way around union agreements might be helpful. I would say that we can save money in making sure that a lot of the events that happen annually are actually baked into the shifts that we project for. I'm talking about the St. Patrick's Day Parade, the Pride Parade, the Puerto Rican Day Parade, all of these parades that happen every year and somehow actually end up being time and a half because they're not included. Unplanned for events are a separate thing. That being said, I also want to increase entry-level pay for police officers. If police officers are going to carry a gun around me and my kids, I want to make sure that police officer is not only properly vetted psychologically, but that they are making a living wage. I don't want that police officer to worry about whether they can afford to keep a roof over their heads. Right now, they're paid $55,000, $58,000 a year entry level. I would want to bring it up around 60 to 65.
Okay. Comptroller Lander.
Specifically on this issue of claims, both against the NYPD, but actually the city last year paid out about $1.5 billion in all claims. The two largest were traffic crashes caused by city vehicles and police misconduct. Right now, those are just paid from the general fund, so there's no agency accountability whatsoever. So I've laid out a proposal that claims would be paid by the agencies that cause them, give them a 5-year trend line and say, if you can reduce the claims payouts, you can keep half the savings for new programs you want to start. But if it goes up above, then that's going to come out of your budget, and then give them the tools that they need to make sure that they are reducing it. So that'll work substantially at the PD. That'll work at a lot of other city agencies. I mean, this is largely a management issue. That is why I've said that I would like to keep Jessie Tisch on as police commissioner. She has started to show what accountability looks like, making sure that CCRB recommendations are being upheld at the NYPD, stopping car chases, and we got to keep that going if we're going to reduce overtime. It does require, though, also addressing the staffing crisis at PD, where we're down about 1,500 officers below budgeted headcount. So I've laid out plans to increase the NYPD cadet program, to have a program called Homes for City Workers that'll help retain so that we could get rid of that $1 billion excess in overtime.
Thank you. Senator Mayoral.
Yeah, I think the overtime problem is in part a personnel problem, and so we should be returning it to pre-pandemic headcounts. I also think that there is a culture of accountability issue. I have proposed in my public safety plan an increase in resources for the CCRB. I am someone that had went through the CCRB process, did not get any vindication, did not get the right outcome, and had to utilize our federal courts to do so. If we had a culture of accountability on the front end, New York taxpayers would not be on the hook for it on the back end.
Finally, Mr. Stringer.
When I was city controller and we were looking at claims against the city, we saw that there was a huge amount of cases against certain precincts in NYPD. So I started a program called ClaimStack, and that meant that we looked at where the claims against NYPD were coming from, and no surprise, it was concentrated in certain precincts. I went to the police commissioner at the time and said, why don't you take my data as a way of looking at where complaints were coming from in PD, and I'll give you that data if you report back to me, and then I'll report back to you and see that we actually reduce claims by 15%. I think that management tool will work not just with PD, but around the city. And look, the truth is we do not have a police headcount that is working. It's the lowest police count we've had in a generation, down to 33,461 officers. Cops are leaving the force, not because they're getting out of law enforcement. The younger ones are leaving after 2 to 5 years. They don't want to be cops. And no one is taking the police test. 8,000 people took the police test, meaning we're only going to hire 1,000 police officers. You know how many people took the sanitation test last go-around? 60,000. So we have to recognize that policing is also how we're going to reduce overtime by $600 million. And we're going to take that $600 million and invest it in the mental health initiatives to prevent crime and to help the people who are struggling. This money should not be spent on overtime because we don't have enough officers covering parades.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to do a quick lightning round. Comptroller Lander already kind of gave us his answer to this question, but I'm wondering, would you keep Jessica Tisch as police commissioner? If not, why not? Let's start with Michael Blake.
I haven't decided yet, because if you're a good manager, you would wait till you get in and make a determination and not make a blanket yes or no this early out.
Thank you. Mr. Myrie?
Yes.
Ms. Ramos?
I would not. I would want to make sure that we are creating a morale of a meritocracy out of the NYPD. So I would want someone who's, walked the streets and worn the badge. That being said, I would consider her for my administration in order to help lead the operations of many of the different city agencies.
Mr. Stringer?
I get asked this all the time, who are you going to hire? And it's usually, you could say, well, I'll hire this one for this vote or that vote. So I decided I'm not talking about who I'm going to hire. We're going to have a transition committee, but I will tell you that Jess is on my short list, but I think we need to talk to a lot of New Yorkers about rebuilding this government.
Mr. Tilson?
Yes. Look at the monthly crime stats since you took office, took the police commissioner position in November, and almost immediately, every month since then, crime has been plunging, and it's, I believe, attributable to her good management.
Comptroller Lander, do you have anything to add quickly?
If you want the evidence for what he just said, look on Michael Lasher's Substack, where he's kind of documented the Jessie Tisch effect.
Look, what I'm proud of in the Comptroller's office is the people I have hired are first rate, best budget people, best contracts people. That's what I will do as mayor, is hire first rate deputy mayors and commissioners who are world-class professionals, who are not cronies, who didn't get there because they with some political favor. I mean, this administration, people are so fed up with the corruption. What we need is honest, effective leadership back at City Hall, and that's what I will bring. And I think that Jessica Tisch as commissioner is a model for the kind of agency leader I will be looking for.
All right. I lied earlier when I said that was our final section. We have a short miscellaneous section, including a question from a student from John Jay, which we'll get to in a second. Very quick, rapid fire. Mayor Eric Adams' administration has moved to reopen an ICE office at Rikers Island. Temporary restraining order on that today, I believe. But a yes or no down the line if you would keep that office open, if it does open. Mr. Blake.
Hell no.
Yeah, no effing way.
No.
No way, Jose.
No.
There should be one, but not under this Trump administration.
There should be an ICE office at Rikers.
There should be, but I would not have one given this administration has proven its lawlessness.
Do you want to say more about why you think there should be?
Yes, because I think local authorities, in the case of people who are here illegally, who have joined gangs, who are committing crimes, our local authorities should have the option to turn them. In some cases, I do not think in some cases we need to wait for conviction.
This is unconstitutional what's being said right now.
No. Let me give you an example.
It is unconstitutional what's being said right now.
Last fall, one of Alvin Bragg's ADAs was coming home at 2 a.m, was sexually assaulted and terrorized by someone who was soon after arrested. Turns out he was a Venezuelan migrant gang member. It was his 7th arrest last year. Had there been an ICE office at Rikers, the police could have turned him over and let the federal government take care of this.
When you say you shouldn't wait for conviction, that is a rebuttal of due process.
I am saying if someone is arrested for a serious or violent crime in this city, we, the city, should have the ability to turn that person over to federal authorities to adjudicate that.
What if it's a false accusation? What about if they get the wrong guy?
He was arrested with her phone, and there's video camera of this particular guy. So
all right, we're going to leave it there.
Everybody deserves their day in court.
We'll leave it there.
We're going to ask a quick 30-second question about the city's sanctuary city policies. Do you think the policies as they exist today are sufficient? Do they need to be pared back or expanded? If pared back or expanded, please explain why. This question is for everyone, so please 30 seconds each. We'll start with Mr. Lander.
I support the policies as they exist today. ICE out of our schools, of our hospitals. Only if someone has been convicted of a serious or violent offense should there be that cooperation. Unfortunately, they're not well being implemented right now because we've got a mayor who works for Donald Trump and not for New Yorkers. And so he has not instructed the vendors and the staff who work at, who are the receptionists for our schools and public hospitals and precincts, all the places people need to feel comfortable. I mean, folks, we got families who are afraid to send their kids to school, survivors of domestic violence, afraid to come forward and report. This is the greatest immigrant city the world has ever known, but we got to live up to that statue in the harbor. So keep the laws the way they are and have a mayor who will actually implement them.
Thank you, Mr. Stringer.
Yeah, look, I'm going to continue as mayor to support our sanctuary city laws. You would think that we would not have to expand them because they have been put to good use over time. But in this administration, we're going to have to use, as Zelnis talks about, using every legal tool we possibly can to protect our innocent people, and they are innocent people. Obviously, the people who are the gangbangers and the gang members, I mean, I would hand them over, but I would not hand over innocent people. I would hand over people after conviction.
Before their due process rights were.
Of course.
You would hand them over before they had due
No,
process?
no, obviously they go through trial, they get convicted, then you hand them over and say goodbye.
Mr. Tilson?
This is a hard one for me because this administration has proven that it cannot be trusted to give anyone due process at the federal level. I support New York sanctuary city law. The only carve-out is in the case of serious criminal activity, and that doesn't mean it's unconstitutional. Nobody gets due process. It simply means that we, the city, wash our hands of it and let the feds give them due process and deport if necessary. The problem is I can't, in good conscience, say that I would do any of this, even cooperating with criminal activity, because this administration has proven that it acts unconstitutionally and lawlessly.
Thank you. Mr. Blake?
We have to expand out our sanctuary city protections so that all of our immigrant families have an opportunity to be protected. But we want to be clear, because this was mentioned earlier, depending what happens in Albany in the next few days and week, could actually create a greater crisis. Because when we changed raise the age in speedy trial and discovery, one of the elements we changed was that if an individual was around a crime, they would not get the same charge. So if a young man was sitting in a car not knowing that someone else broke into the house, they were all going down for burglary 2 or robbery 2. If they go back, the reason why this is relevant here, what happens if you are around someone, and to Whitney's point, they are all just seriously criminals. If you get convicted for something you actually didn't do, then all of a sudden you're getting deported. It's absolutely unacceptable. It's inhumane. So we're not actually assessing the totality right now. We need to protect our immigrants, full stop. Then we need to have policies that don't actually take us backwards, which could lead to a scenario where individuals who did not commit a crime and are here legally, as we're seeing right now, where legal citizens are being deported, could actually be then kicked out of New York City because of bad decisions that are being made.
Thank you. Senator Myrie.
Consider how far we've fallen as a city, where Rudy Giuliani was a bigger defender of our sanctuary laws than Eric Adams. This used to not be controversial because we understood what this community meant. I'm the proud son of 2 immigrants who were not documented when they got here. They took me to the hospital because they knew the city would have their back and it wouldn't be coming after them. So I'd be fiercely defending our sanctuary city laws. I'd be upholding them, and we have no constitutional obligation to carry out the federal government's policies. We will not be doing that in my administration.
Thank you. Senator Ramos?
Yes to the sanctuary city law, no to ICE in our public institutions. I think the mayor of the city of New York should be the loudest cheerleader for work permits from the federal government, so that we're creating serious entry points into our economy for our immigrants, so that bad actors don't start filling that void like we've seen now over the past several months and recent years with the most recent migrant influx. And I go a step further to say that in a city where we have some 7-odd law schools, it's high time we have an immigration clinic so that our migrants can actually apply for the asylum that they're seeking. The migrant influx started now just about 3 years ago, and yet only a third of asylum seekers have been able to put in their paperwork because it is just so cost prohibitive. So if we actually prioritize the safety of our immigrants, we are therefore prioritizing the safety of everyone and safeguarding our economy by making sure that we have people who are ready to work and push for a better tomorrow.
Thank you.
All right. For a student question, I'm going to ask you to keep it shorter just because we're short on time here. But Teresa, an undergraduate student in Humanities and Justice, asks, how are you going to ensure that people feel safe on public transportation? And separately, what will be your first steps in mitigating the fact that we often see people experiencing homelessness sleeping on trains and in the subway system? And I'll start with Mr. Blake.
We have to, well, first, it's great to have a student question, so we need to listen to our students more. So we have to, again, we have to increase mental health professionals helping individuals that are suffering with mental health challenges on the front end. And that means not just riding on the trains and also on the buses, but outside on subway stops, outside on the street, as well as what is happening for the individuals that are not getting supported on this dynamic. One thing we have not talked about at all has been, what are we doing for the 1 out of 8 New York City public school students that are homeless right now? What are we doing for the communities that are suffering right now? What are we doing to break down the stigmas as well? Taking those steps will obviously help all of us. But to your question around public safety, if we actually help individuals that are on these trains get to the help that they need, as well as reimbursing the nonprofits faster to actually provide the support that they need, that is the way you actually have a comprehensive approach to actually address the mental health crisis and increase public safety.
Thank you. Controller Lander.
As I mentioned earlier, the #1 commitment I'm making in this mayoral campaign is to end street homelessness for people with serious mental illness. We don't have to be a city where a couple thousand of our mentally ill neighbors sleep on subway platforms and the stoops of our buildings. So I've laid out already on day one, 75-page plan that looks at the continuum of care, what we're measuring at City Hall, that housing first model that gets people off the subways and the streets into supportive housing. We've got the units tonight. It'll cost about $100 million in year one, $30 million a year after that. But hospital and jail are so damn expensive. We will save money once we implement the program. It'll be much safer on our subways. One thing I do want to say, though, is just today, because Trump is coming again for congestion pricing, that we also need to save congestion pricing so that we can have the resources to invest in our subways and buses, and that's in our signal modernization and elevators so they're accessible, and also in platform barriers and new station gates that can make our system safer for everyone.
Thank you. Senator Mayoral.
Yeah, I think there are some capital improvements that are not as expensive that can help with safety, just like better lighting in all of our stations. But I think law enforcement that is in our subways cannot be bunched up at the turnstile. They cannot be on their phones. They have to be smartly deployed going throughout the system. And they have to be paired with clinicians. We have a lot of acronyms and alphabet soup teams that are only deployed in our system during certain parts of the day. I think it should be 24/7. They should be paired with law enforcement, and they should be smartly deployed so people are kept safe. And if they have to be removed from our subways, that they're put on the path to recovery, as we discussed earlier.
Thank you. Senator Ramos.
So I live by a major transportation hub, which is the 74th Street station in Jackson Heights. Right, 5 train lines. It's where the Q70 coming from LaGuardia Airport ends. And being a born and raised Jackson Heights resident, I have to say that over the past 40 years, I've seen just about the same people frequent that station for months and years at a time. And it's high time that the city actually invest in help desks inside of our train stations. There's so much vacant retail space. There's lots of big spaces at certain train stations where we can dispatch human service workers and the right people to make sure that we're becoming experts in those who need help the most, and we're being effective in bringing them into the services that they should be able to trust, leading with supportive housing units and making sure we have the psychiatric beds to match. That is a very big part of making sure that we're making our trains safer. I would also agree with making sure that we are not bunching up our police officers. Most crime that does happen in our public transit happens on the trains themselves, not on the platforms, and they're not going to see it happen if they're playing Candy Crush.
Thank you. Mr. Stringer.
I'm going to end the Eric Adams performative policing model, which essentially was flood the zone, cops on the platforms, run up overtime from $650 million to $1.3 billion, and show almost nothing for it. He didn't keep his promise to align policing and mental health services. I will. We then had the governor send in 1,000 military personnel. They sat there. They were nice. They're heroes of ours, but they didn't do a damn thing. And so we spent all this money for performance, and then he added K5, the robot. That robot's going to the Museum of the City of New York. That's the yes, that thing. But what we have to do is recognize that we need more cops. We need to hire 3,000 more police officers. I know people don't like to say a number, but that's what we need to do. We need to retain the good police officers we have. And then through that savings, let's align policing on the trains with mental health professionals to actually help the people who are not committing crimes, but who are simply living because they don't have a place to go. They don't have supportive housing. They don't have a hospital bed. And the worst that happens is the cops take these poor individuals who suffer, leave them on the streets. Maybe they go to a hospital for 48 hours. We don't track them. We don't care about them once they leave the hospital. We wipe our hands, and it's wrong. We need to track people with real mental health professionals. This is why we need H+H to step up and be reborn to a full mental health capacity that I know we can be.
Thank you. Finally, Mr. Tilson.
Yeah, subway crime is down 18% this year, and I credit good policing as opposed to performative policing. It's not just more cops, but they are enforcing and interacting with people who are sleeping in the station or across multiple seats, drinking, smoking, etc. About a third of those interactions have resulted in arrests. 1/3 of those people arrested have criminal records averaging 21 arrests. So that's good, effective policing, and it's resulting in safer subways for us.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your thoughtful answers. We're going to move into the closing statement section of our forum. We ask that you keep your answers to 30 seconds, please. At least pretend to try. So we're going to start off with Mr. Tilson.
Sure. If you think this city is going in the right direction, are happy with the status quo and how career politicians are running this city, then I am not your guy. If, on the other hand, you are fed up and believe there needs to be real change, I believe I'm the only change candidate in the race. I pledge to end street homelessness, cut crime in half, double the rate of construction of affordable housing, and make New York the best city in the world for small businesses. So I hope you will join me in the fight for greater prosperity, affordability, and safety for every New Yorker, because New York deserves better. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stringer.
Well, if you believe you need a career government leader, I am your person. I've been a reformer in every office I've held. I took on the assembly leadership. I diversified our committee boards. As controller, I divested from fossil fuel and guns and private prisons. I have pushed the limit to whatever I have done as an elected official, and we need a mayor who is ready and willing on day one to know exactly where to go, knows where the bodies are buried, has a clear vision and agenda, but also has leadership and competence. This is not a time for a mayor with training wheels. We just are dealing with that now. We need new leadership. I'm ready to serve if you'll have me. Rank me number 1 or number 2, but I'm not taking 3s. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Ramos.
Well, I'm running to be the next mayor of the city of New York to bring workers' voices to City Hall. I want to make sure we're focusing on delivery, not dogma, on accountability, not orthodoxy, really making sure that we are delivering for New Yorkers the quality of life that we deserve. And I am a candidate who also has been a public servant for a long time, just not as long as Scott. For 20 years, I have experience working in the city council. I've been a worker in the mayor's office. I've been a state senator now for 7 years. And so I really understand the different perspectives of what can make our government work for working people, because New York City wouldn't be the greatest city in the world if we take away any one group. New York City has to continue to be a city for everyone, where we put progress ahead of promises.
Thank you. Senator Myrie.
Thank you. Listen, y'all wouldn't be here if you didn't care about New York City. All of you in this auditorium care deeply about the future of this city. And the decisions that we make in this moment will write the next chapter of this city. We cannot be a place where only millionaires and billionaires have a good time and where only they can survive and thrive. This has to be a city that works for all of us, and you need a mayor that is going to work for you. We used to be the capital of opportunity, where you could come here and be whatever it is you want, no matter where you came from, no matter what language you spoke, no matter who you loved. That opportunity is lost for so many New Yorkers. So we got to change the course. We got to step up in this moment. We have a president that is attacking our city every single day. So we got to stand up for our fellow New Yorkers, and we have to stand up for our country in this moment. That's the kind of mayor that I'm going to be.
Thank you, Senator Comptroller Lander.
Thank you, John Jay. Thank you, CSS. Thank you to our moderators. Thanks to all of you for coming. It's so important to have this dialogue. I'm running for mayor to bring honest, effective leadership back to City Hall, to stand up to Donald Trump on behalf of New York City values, and to govern the city more effectively so we can live up to our values. We all talked tonight about a more affordable, a healthier, a safer city. It's only going to be that way if it's a better run city. And that's what I've learned how to do as city controller. My audits and public sector management have saved the city over $2.5 billion. We've canceled a whole bunch of crony contracts from this administration and held them accountable time and time again. And I put out a set of ideas for how we make government work better through technology, how we get a world-class city workforce, how we reform our procurement system. That stuff is boring, it's in the weeds, but that is how you deliver that safer, more affordable, more livable, and better run city that every single New Yorker deserves. And that city that doesn't have mentally ill homeless folks on the street, where the housing's more affordable and government is working, is a city that can stand up to Donald Trump on behalf of New York City values and show what genuinely effective, inclusive, multiracial democracy looks like right here in New York City. Thank you.
And last but not least, Mr. Blake.
As a husband, as a father, as a son of the Bronx, as a child of God, I'm running for mayor because we deserve better. We deserve a new generation of leadership that is actually focused on giving us a plan that we can be inspired about, explain how we achieve that plan, and how do we pay for that plan. I am running because we have to have higher wages to be able to address the affordability crisis, while also actually having truly affordable housing, because who is it actually affordable to right now? We need to have a local median income. We need to end credit scores used for rent and homeownership applications. We need to reimagine education so that you can go to school, graduate from school, and have a chance to be able to live out your dreams. If you are like me and you understand that we deserve better and we need change, I am asking that you rank Michael Blake as your first choice for mayor. We come at this moment where we have to ask ourselves, is there someone on this stage who has been a part of a team that has defeated Donald Trump? I have done that when I was vice chair of the DNC. Is there someone on this stage who has level experience at all three levels? I have done that for you as well. If you are ready to actually address what's happening around affordability, childcare, and believe again in what's possible in our city and saying tomorrow begins today, my name is Michael Blake, and I ask for your vote to be the next mayor of New York City. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. With that, we want to thank all the candidates and our audience who tuned in online and who showed up here in person. There's a lot of forums in this campaign season. We'll close out with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was, a chivalrous act that got me here, but at the same time, too, I already knew that